All right, today marks 9 years since Hurricane Harvey made landfall near Rockport, Texas as a Category 4 hurricane. It was the days that followed that proved catastrophic. Harvey weakened to a tropical storm and then stalled over southeast Texas, producing historic and devastating flooding across the area. You know, the storm exposed vulnerabilities across our region, and 9 years later, its impact is still shaping how Houston prepares for the next major storm. Joining us now with what Houston has learned since then, meteorologist Jeff Lindner with the Harris County Flood Control District, who was a trusted voice, during the storm. When you look back at Harvey 9 years later, what stands out to you most about the storm and its impact on Harris County, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's the rainfall totals, and I think it was our understanding of what we were facing. I think there was a lot of struggle going into Harvey of comprehending what the amount of rainfall was going to do. So, we have big rains around here all the time, but when you start talking 30, 40 inches of rain, that's more than what most of us has ever seen in a single storm. And so I think for a lot of people, we had just had the tax day storm, and there was some comparisons to that, and then of course Tropical Storm Allison back in 2001, some comparisons to that, and so, but when you look at Harvey, it was double those rainfall amounts over a huge footprint. We're talking the entire region, not just a portion of the county or a portion of the region, and so. I think that was a little bit of the struggle with that. I think another struggle, Cheetah, like you remember, was we were dealing with the Category 4 hurricane going into the coastal bend. But up here, Harvey was not a hurricane for us. It was a flood. And so those two different kind of preparation and messaging challenges that we had. Yes, it's a hurricane, but we're not getting the damaging winds. We're not getting the trees blown down. We're not getting the roof damage. We're getting the flood up here in southeast Texas. And I think that was a little bit of a challenge too.
Oh, you're exactly right. Even from the rapid intensification before it made landfall, and then, as it weakened. I remember when we had a really big lull, and a big part of Houston kind of thought that was it, right? We had that first initial wave of heavy rain, and then it was like, well, okay, that was bad, but it wasn't that bad. And then it was just rounds and rounds of rain. When you look back, what made Harvey's rainfall so extreme and dangerous?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was that Saturday night. We kind of had that lull on Saturday during the day. The sun came out. The questions were pretty immediate. Oh, this was a blown forecast. Oh, this isn't going to happen. Oh, this wasn't that bad. And then that Saturday night when we had that kind of band come up and move slowly across the area from Fort Bend County into Harris County, and that's when we got the 25 inches of rain in 12 hours. Matter of fact, I was actually on air with David Paul that evening around 11 o'clock Saturday evening talking about the concerns we had at that time for Brays Bayou and the Meyerland area flooding. And so I think that was, the challenge we had on that Saturday into Sunday morning. And then just the realization early Sunday morning in the pre-dawn hours, when we started to notice water levels getting higher than Allison. Allison was really our benchmark flood until Harvey. And we started surpassing Allison levels on some of our bayous by feet. And, we knew it was bad. And when the sun came up on Sunday morning, and we got some of those images of just how bad it really was, and that really is kind of what stuck is that Saturday night and the Sunday morning time period.
Oh, I remember that, so well. As you look back, you're with the Harris County Flood Control District, and this is what you do. This is what you study. Your research is in. What do you think that Houston has learned about Houston's flood risk since Harvey?
I would hope we've learned a decent amount. I hope the realization is that we all have a flood risk. The numbers kind of say otherwise. If you look at the number of flood insurance policies in the county, they're about stagnant. There really hasn't been a change since before Harvey, through Harvey, and until now. About 30% of the residents in this county have flood insurance. So I still feel like a lot of people don't think this can happen to them, and it can. I think there's the realization also that the floodplains are really just a rate insurance map. They don't necessarily convey the entire risk of the flooding we face in this area. So a lot of homes flooded outside of the floodplain, not only in Harvey, but in some of the other floods. Because the floodplains are just from our creeks and bayous and rivers. They don't show the flooding that comes from roadways or comes from just ponding of water when it rains 4, 5, 6 inches in an hour. And so I hope we've kind of learned some of those lessons and the importance of flood insurance. But it's the data kind of says otherwise.
You are exactly right about that. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today as we look back. It was 10 o'clock this evening, 9 years ago, that it first made landfall in Rockport. And then from there, we just continued to track that for days and days. And I know there are a lot of lessons learned, especially when we go through these hot, dry stretches and people often forget, hurricane season, how active it can be. Thank you for your time. We're going to continue to look back at this over the next several days.